Hello and welcome to Wednesday's webinar here live from UK Fast Campus in Manchester. We've got a brilliant webinar planned for you today. It's SME and Startup Support Webinar. My name is Arlene Bulfin. I'm your host today. Delighted to be here to introduce the panel to you and to make sure we get lots of great advice and tips from these guys about startups. We know that a lot of you that watch us are at that stage, and it's a really, really crucial stage in your business. So today we're going to ask a lot of questions around what makes this part of the world great for startups, and it is. We know that much. But are you getting the right support to really supercharge your business and get it going in this early stage? It's such a daunting prospect starting your own business, but it's really important to get as much help as you can. And there's loads of it out there. So our team today are going to talk you through all of the places you can go to get that help. Without further ado, let's introduce them. So we'll start with you, Janine.
Yep, I'm Janine Smith. I'm head of growth services, specialist services at the Growth Company, particularly the Growth Hub. So we've got a whole range of staff that's able to support businesses at any step of the journey, from sector support all the way through to thematic support, accessing finance, mentoring, looking after your staff, how to recruit. So every step of that journey, we can put some support in place to help.
We want to hear more about that today, Janine, definitely. Mark?
Hi, yeah, my name's Mark Waters. So my background's in education. Well, I left education about 15 years ago, set up 2 small businesses basically on my own with friends. And then more recently, we set up a new organisation where I'm working with a whole load of professionals from industry, engineering, science, technology.
Wow.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. So, yeah, brilliant. Trish?
And I'm the director at Tech Manchester, here based at the UK Fast Campus. We are a tech incubator and support organisation focusing very much on early stage tech founded businesses.
So you've been here before, Trish. This is not your first webinar. Lovely.
Hi, my name is Bernard. I'm Bernard Clark. I'm from a company called Know and Do Limited. I'm co-founder of the business. We've been around for 10 years in Manchester now. Our focus is on supporting leaders of businesses with their problems, helping them solve their problems around staffing problems, usually in strategy problems, at points of change. I'm also, I've been part of a family business now for 30-something years. So I helped a family start that and have seen a small business grow and sustain itself over a number of decades.
Brilliant, great experience. Liz?
So I am head of entrepreneur engagement at Tech Nation. We are a new-ish organisation, about 12 months old now, taken from the legacy of what was Tech North and Tech City, and we are absolutely 100% focused on making the UK the place to imagine, start and grow a digital business. The team that I look after are currently based in 9 cities around the UK. It will be 11 when I've finished recruiting them, and they are on the ground talking to founders, providing support all day, every day.
Wow. This is brilliant. I promised a great lineup. I didn't lie, did I? Sometimes I lie. I didn't lie today. Right, so we're going to jump straight in. The first question I've got on my list, and I think you'll all be able to give different ideas on this, but what makes the Northwest so good for startups?
From my perspective, it's such a collaborative city. I mean, we're all sat around here in terms of sport organisations, and we all know each other. We all know what each other does, how to refer in, understand, from if business comes to us, how can we help them to access what support we've got, but also what support exists across the city. There's so many meetups that exist. The starts themselves, the founders, the businesses will find that out. And they'll go and collaborate, and they'll go and work with each other to look at how they can grow their business themselves through each other. So I think from my perspective, everybody works really well together. It's a small city.
It's a small place, Manchester,
it's a small place.
Isn't it?
Everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of word of mouth out there in terms of I've got a mentor from such and such a place, or I've found this really, really useful, and people are willing to share through through social networks or through just the meetups themselves. There's a lot out there, and people are willing to get behind each other to really push people forward. And I think there's a massive grit element. People are absolutely, they'll work the socks off to get to where they need to get to. And whatever obstacles come in their way, it's one of those, right, well, let's knock them down and let's push forward. So it's that true northern grit, I think, that exists
That's really nice.
here. Yeah.
Liz, well, you said nearly 11 cities on the list. So what is it then that you see when you compare, and I know you're not allowed, talk about any as being better as another, but when you look at the Northwest and this part of the country, what makes it so good?
I think one of the things that, and the stats back me up in this,
Okay,
so I'm
good.
allowed to
You're
say
allowed to say
this. One of the things that is quite clear about the Northwest, exactly as Janine says, it's collaborative. And I think one of the kind of factors that leads to that is that from a tech perspective, which is clearly what we're focused on, there's a real balance in terms of life cycle stage. So we've got lots and lots of startups, and they're doing really exciting things, and they're meeting each other, and they're accessing all the networks. We've also got a really significant number of scale-up businesses who are going on that journey. You know, they're going from 10 to 20 to 50 to 100 people. We've also got, and you know, we're sat in one of them today, really significant later stage businesses who have got knowledgeable people, knowledgeable founders, people who want to give back, the funds to kind of support. So you get this sort of virtuous circle, and that balance, I think, we take for granted because we live in it. And of course, Trish does amazing things at Tech Manchester. And of course, UK Fast have a webinar. That does not exist in every city. And I think, you know, it speaks to the sort of the success and the opportunity for Manchester, but also we have to recognise that Manchester anchors the rest of the Northwest, and we are somewhat further ahead than some of the other towns and smaller cities. But again, you don't have that in every cluster. You don't have a big city that is as far along in their kind of development of what you do with startups and SMEs as you've perhaps got in Manchester.
It's great to hear.
Yeah, and I think from sitting around that, we've also got a really strong political base where, you know, you've got the 10 local authorities in Greater Manchester that work really hand in glove to make sure that Manchester's prominence nationally moves forward. And, you know, in other areas, you don't have that pulling together of the political agenda.
And whilst there are other combined authorities in name, they don't work the same way that ours does in Manchester. So I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think you've also got a mindset here, which is a can-do attitude. I moved up from London, which loved, and but when I moved up here as well, the attitude is, well, what can we do now? Actually, we can do this. We can put ourselves forward, and that can combine with geography. It can combine with the familiarity of people that networks can form, and the variety of the Northwest. Going out to exotic places like Ellesmere Port and Warrington and Skelmersdale for our work. It is the varieties here as well, but it's reachable. People can come into Manchester, they can connect very easily. In London and other bigger cities, you can get lost in that city, whereas you can find your place here and still be part of something bigger.
It's livable, isn't it, for so many people? Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think it's this kind of what everybody's saying is that it's almost like this perfect storm's happening where all of these things are starting to come together, and actually it's now piquing the interest of the international businesses. So every month you're hearing about a new 100 jobs, 200 jobs. Amazon, GCHQ's picked here as their next headquarters. You know, Amazon have picked here as their next headquarters, and there's an American company that Midas had posted yesterday. I didn't get the name.
No, begins
but it's another two. Yeah, begins with F.
It's a consultancy agency, isn't it?
But another 200 jobs, and I think it's that kind of they're now coming, and that creates such great opportunities then for startups and scale-ups to start engaging because they want to embed themselves in this community feeling, so they reach out then in their supply chains, and that just continues to build that virtuous circle that you were talking about. You know, Vodafone chose here as their first 5G accelerator. You know, that's phenomenal for us to get that over and above any of the other cities that we're here, and again, it allows those startups and scale-ups to pivot and start and continue to innovate as they have been doing.
There's a real kind of ripple effect as well in terms of talent. So I know and from a tech perspective, there has been noise on the ground since the Amazon announcements and GCHQ, etc. People get nervous about, well, I'm a startup. How can I compete with those salaries to attract the talent? The other side of that coin is that if you've got that huge workforce that is moving into Manchester and being attracted by those jobs, they won't all stay. And it does kick off a whole load of interesting founders who will start and then spend some time in a career, you know, in a place like Amazon and then decide, you know what, I can do something better on my own. So I think there are two sides to that talent coin as well.
Like you say, that ripple effect, you're going to have people working for these big companies who may no longer want to work for a big company and want to go for a start. So my son works for Deloitte. Right, and up till recently, he's got a new job. But before that, he was applying for startups. Mando Bank, I think it's Mando, because he wanted to be working for a smaller company where he could be doing everything rather than just be part of a big corporate. So you're going to have that pool of talent who may want to stay in the Northwest or Manchester, but have a bit of a challenge. So you know, but I've got friends who run startups here who do struggle because they can't compete with Amazon. You know, because their funding's different. So the other side of it is, it's going to be difficult.
I think it helps with that brain drain as well. You know, we've got 4 universities in Manchester with huge talent that could be drawn to London, it could be drawn to San Francisco, wherever else it might be. If we've got those businesses in Manchester and they're now coming here, that helps retain some of the students that would would have gone elsewhere.
And I think
So-
the stats back that up. We do. We do love a stats. Manchester Digital's Relocate initiative released a story just at the back end of last year to say that it's actually it's officially reversed.
Yes.
That we now retain more students than we lose, and we actually attract more students from places like London coming, choosing Manchester because of the lower cost of living, the higher quality of life. And I think even from a startup's point of view, you know, that those things also mean that you don't have to be from a position of privilege to have a go. So I think it kind of levels the playing field a little bit because we've got all these other great kind of sort of things about Manchester which make it such a great place to live. I think it's still the number one.
Very much
to live in the UK.
I think it's one of those as well where it's attracting international students more than what it's ever had. You know, and I know that's a big remit for the universities to bring in more international talent, but it is growing. You know, and if we can retain those here, working in those organisations.
The kind of the university perspective, because our key focus is working with young people and looking at the impact of technology on their future careers. So having all of these universities and the wider, so we're working with Manchester Metropolitan, Chester, Edge Hill, Staffordshire, and we've met people in there who are really keen to engage with us, who are putting on workshops, are sharing their research, you know, but then we're linking up schools and colleges with them and helping them to develop their own partnerships. So you've got that infrastructure where there's just so much going on.
I think that's a
from
really
that point of view.
point. You know, we're talking around how Manchester's really collaborative and a really great place to start, but then we've got to look beyond that and look at the schools and look at primary schools around how can we then encourage those coming through to look at entrepreneurship and looking at starting their own business as a really valid option for them and
a career choice.
Exactly, and you know the work that you do from a UK Fast perspective of bringing schools in and showing them what can be created and just understanding.
It's
absolutely critical. We were just talking before in terms of
looking for Easter eggs.
we were talking before in terms of our backgrounds in teaching. And from our perspective, it was one of those, teaching business, you're teaching around going into a corporate. There's nothing in the curriculum really about starting your own business. So if we're fostering that seed right at a very, very early stage.
I think it is coming through as well in terms of more and more people, 15% or so of the workforce are self-employed. And but when I listen to some of the schools talking now, their children and young people are aware of that. Maybe not formally, but they're more aware than ever because of the media and because of the access to information and going back to sort of previous generations. So there is that, and also there's that different attitude about wanting something and not having a hierarchy to go through to achieve it. Actually, you can go if you're good enough, you can go and get it when you're 19. You don't have to wait till you're 50.
With the whole digital world that now kids are being brought up in, it's more immediate.
And the hurdles are lower. All these cloud-based platforms, they've all got free versions. So you can actually, you can hack a business together for very little money and get it off the ground within a couple of days.
A school we're working with in Cheshire, where there were 2 year 10s or 2 15-year-olds were earning more than the head. Because they just created their own little business and it expanded. But I think again, just the resources you've got in Manchester, but the wider area, especially with the startups, the access, the potential you've got there for young people to meet this guy who set up met recently a guy who set up a asteroid mining company in Liverpool. He's now moved to Scotland because there's more funding there, sadly. But he was amazing talking to young people because he described himself as the laziest student that ever went to university, and he did international politics and history or something like that. And his final project, he decided on the day, and he read something about asteroid mining, so he started looking at the political, and from that met people, and he's actually now planning to, but to have that network of startups and small businesses that will go out and do one talk or one visit or one, and just say to young people, you can do it. You can have an idea. And like you said, with all the free stuff that's around, they pick it up really quickly, most of them. But all they need is to see that person who's done it and say it's actually okay. And it's actually okay to try something. It's actually okay to fail, as in it's really important to fail and try something because you learn from that. You've got those examples all over.
And that's really important. Yeah. And so we're saying it's a great place. Manchester is the place.
Yeah.
One of 11 places, we're only starting. So for our 15-year-olds in school, so where do we start then? So where do you start on that journey as a company? Where are all the resources? How do we get moving with our business idea? Where do we go? Janine, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's around awareness that, you know, it is easy to start a business. You know, if you've got a seed of an idea, then, you know, it's a case of registering it and getting going. So it's the easiest thing to do. The hardest thing to understand is what you need to do along the way. And, you know, it always comes back to me to financials. You need to have an absolute eye on the ball in terms of where you are financially, that this is something that's sustainable. And there is an absolute plethora of support across, you know, from my perspective, that Greater Manchester area and wider, that, you know, if you're a new startup, regardless of what kind of startup it is, the support's out there for you to access to look at the fundamentals that you absolutely need to put in place to ensure that you've got something that can sustain and can grow. So, you know, from a national perspective, the Growth Hub network is out there. They all look very, very different. Manchester's, you know, is probably the most well-resourced, well, it's the most well-resourced across the country. But, you know, your first point of contact is your growth hubs to then find out what exists in your local area. Manchester's got a huge abundance of startup support, whether it be through public sector or through the private sector. But from our perspective, from a growth hub, we can help plug in what is the most relevant source of support for you.
So that's the growth hub.
It's the growth hub.
You're saying to start.
To start, just to look at, right, this is my idea, this is where I am in my journey, and then to help plug in what exists, whether that be what exists across the growth company or exists across that wider remit. If it's, you know, a case of looking at a mentor that's got a tech background, or looking in at some awards that exist and some real propelling opportunities that exist through Tech Nation, to look at how, you know, businesses can really catapult themselves.
Forward, Mark, from your point of view, where did you go starting out first business? Did you go to the Growth Hub?
No.
Did you know the Growth Hub existed?
I was teaching at the time.
You were teaching.
And I just had an idea. And I had a friend who could build me a 3D model. The idea was looking at how we could develop 3D immersive environments that kids could go into to explore and online meet people or find out examples of different people who work in different industries. So my friend Chris said, I could build you something. So he built it. And then just by chance, I met someone, we got some funding. So I then left teaching and lived on that. So it was a real Heath Robinson, just ideas, meeting people with no structure. No real business model. And it kind of lasted about 3 years.
Wow.
But then, because I didn't have I get bored really quickly. I have lots of ideas, but I'm not really strategic. I didn't have that structure. So it didn't really go anywhere. The whole thing of marketing it was just from project to project to project, almost on one level. You know, and the whole thing of employing people and recruiting people, and it's just not me, you know. So whereas now the kind of forward future we set up is that's kind of evolved by working with a group of people who've got all different skills and experiences, you know. So we now had our kind of a board meeting on Monday with 3 sides of A4. You know, so Phil Atkinson from Dares, you know, it's like, and I'm going, but that's really important. Our colleague Trevor's done all the business, the financial bit, right, what funding have we got? Right, that will last us till July. We need 2 more projects in by then that'll keep us. And if we're going to recruit this other person we want, that's going to cost us that. And I'm just sat there going, but they're doing it. So as a group, so I've got business mentoring, but by people who are joining me rather than going out. But there are gaps that we need help with. Setting up my email. You know, the people around me haven't got time to do that. I need someone to help.
Don't look at me.
No. But you know, that kind of tech. But then you've got the whole legal side. You've got GDPR. All of these things that I never even thought about when I was running the business on my own. Whereas now, if it's going to get bigger,
you have to think
and it's things like, you know, liability insurance. We're helping Crewe Town Council do an event, Traction, in July. So it's a whole kind of role we got. And that brings in a whole new load of responsibilities. And me on my own, I go, whereas now I can ask around, and they know people who can bring it in.
Brilliant. So
You know?
drawing on a network, or
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
networking and,
Yeah.
and reaching out is really important,
Yeah.
because especially people who create a business often are the ideas people. They're the ones that aren't strategic, the ones that get
not
bored,
at
the ones
all.
who move from one project to the next one. So it's so important that you can pull in resources from around you.
And build that structure around you. So you are, we were just talking before about, I'm off all over the place, and they're going, right, Mark, where are you? I'm in London, why? It's like, and you can see them getting really irate, but I'm taking that advice, and I can't just be spinning around like a crazy boy, because I'll never get the day job done. They'll have loads of, which is what happened before, loads of ideas, but actually that structure,
Really
so the key thing is listening to these people, get the advice and do it. It'll be difficult, but
because if you have an idea, then an idea doesn't necessarily make a business.
No, it doesn't.
A great service or a good product doesn't make a business. It's finding out if that idea is actually sellable. Has it got a value to somebody else, and will they pay you more for it than it cost you to make it or produce it? And so there's some hard, like you said, you started with the finances, the cash flow comes in very early on. You run out of cash once, and that's it as a business. You don't get to sort of start the next day as the same again. So there's some hard lessons you got to learn. But then there's the emotional side as well. Are you ready for the responsibility of running a business? And are you ready for the emotional stress and the highs and the lows? Is your family ready, or those around you? Those are really important things.
I think that's where the power of mentoring really comes on. I know you're a mentor for us, and we work in close collaboration. I think you can get some really strong advice to help with structures and finances and routes to market, but there's nothing like speaking to somebody that's been there and done it, that understands the emotion, that understands the stresses that come with that, understands sleepless nights, just where they've failed, and not to fall into those pitfalls, and just that somebody to talk to around, because it's a lonely place. If it's you as a founder on your own, out there doing this, who do you talk to that can understand the pains and stresses?
I think a key thing is, because I'm from education, so I'm not from a business background. We're working with schools and colleges, and it's costing yourself. Because I find out what some people are charging. God, that's a lot. But then I forget, you've got all the additional costs. You have to be, for the times you're not working, for the insurance, for travel, for people sport. And it's getting that advice from someone to say, you've got this great idea, but the business model is not going to work because you've got to cost it out this. And actually, the market you're going into won't pay that. So everyone might be clapping and going, great. But when you sit down and go, right, let's bring up the money, everyone just disappears.
It's also as well, we get a lot of people that come through that undersell themselves and they price themselves way too low. So
and then it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
It's not a business.
But it's also something that's then not perceived as being of value. Because it's
and that can be a challenge if it's a social focused business, social enterprise, or got social value to it, and they're wonderful to work with as well, because there's an extra passion there to change and make a difference. But you've still got to balance a multi-bottom line if you have different factors. But the money still, the bank doesn't take the goodwill. It takes what cash have you got? So that's a real pressure for people.
I'm going to plug a free resource,
Please,
and I'm not even embarrassed about it. So in fact, I'm going to plug two. A lot of what we've been talking about sits behind two things that you can find on the Tech Nation website. Founders Network is a virtual network of founders, Kel Surprise. Most of them are in business as opposed to having the idea and it's not quite formed yet. So and that can be in a very small way. But the idea is that if you are sat in Truro in Cornwall, you might be the only AR business for miles around, and you might need someone else to talk to. Founders Network is awesome. I would ask everybody to join. The other thing is the resources, I think, that are available through all sorts of different organisations. And I can never figure this out, whether we don't do a good enough job of promoting them, or they're just a bit hidden, or founders don't know to look for them, or some of all of the above. But our contribution to this is something called the Digital Business Academy, which is 85. I know that sounds like a lot. I know it sounds like more than 3 sheets of A4. Bite-sized little courses that have been described by a very high-profile founder as like a mini MBA. And it's everything from, if you're in a job and you want to come up with an idea so you can leave and go and do something else, how might you come up with the idea? All the way through to how do you test a product? How do you do market testing? How do you come up with a business plan? How do you come up with a marketing strategy? All of it in these tiny little chunks. It's all there and accessible and free, but we might need to do some more to surface that so that people know
that
about
kind of stuff that we can then push out, you know, because it's rather than us recreate something, it already exists.
And what else
So
exists
let's-
that we don't?
Yeah, well, we already do. We signpost it quite a lot. Of,
I can confirm.
yeah, into the Digital Business Academy. There's such really powerful little packages that you can do. And yes, there are lots of other online resources that are available. If you Google start a business, you know, we in Manchester, we all appear, but so do lots of other
It can be
resources.
overwhelming, I think.
think
We're at that point now where start a business and there's just so much.
Yeah, which marketing course should I do? Which digital marketing? You know, so Google Garage, obviously, we're here for quite a while. You know, Lloyd's have launched theirs. You know, their digital academy. There's Digital Skills England has one, but it is where we've kind of collated them all into like a resource pack for the startups. And it's like literally day one.
Yeah.
Join all these networks, Founders Network, Manchester Startups Group. You know, this Facebook group, this WhatsApp group, do these academies, but that's just for that's in our network. How do we make all of this more consumable for people who are at various stages, whether they're starting
and
up
who are
or
really busy trying to...
spinning
It's that thing of stopping,
everything,
of kind of managing and understanding the priorities. And the priorities, all right, passion, energy drives it, but that's going to burn out pretty quickly, physically, emotionally, if you're on, on your own, but also if you're not getting that structure. But that's when the kind of mentor, it's chicken and egg, isn't it? How do people, and I've been there, create this great idea, but then actually stop to say, I need some help. And you've got the emotional kind of side of it of saying, I need some help, but it's knowing what they need help with, because quite often they might not know.
Just I need help.
Yeah, it's just,
Burners.
What I was going to say, there's the backdrop to that is the thing that's often not said is business is not fair. And so the world of business is not fair. You don't just get it because you deserve it. At times, people that don't deserve things win contracts or happen to be in the right place, and you've done all the work elsewhere. And so there's an element of actually it is tough. And if for example, finding where to go for support is daunting for you, that doesn't compare with running a business necessarily. So it is a bit of a baptism there in one sense. If you can push yourself through that and make a decision, even if it's the wrong one, you can learn from it. So that fairness needs to come into it. People understand that they may not get the hard work they're putting for, or they may get it as well. It's competition. And there are other great resources as well. And as we mentioned, one here in Manchester is the IP Centre in the library. For first startups there all the time, the business and an IP centre, it's brilliant. And access to so much free information on markets, on research, on data, on companies that really is valuable at times. So you've also got to push yourself out there and make that balance, because you have to work harder as a founder, you have to work longer, and it doesn't stop. And whereas an employee, you come to work and you go home. You don't running a business, you never go home. And so you have to be wanting that if you're going to start your own business.
The whole thing, like we discussed at the moment, because I'm the kind of only employee, and two, and Julie does 2 days a week, but the whole thing of sickness benefits and all that, we haven't got the money to cover me. So it's almost like, what happens? And because the work I'm doing is bringing in the funding, if I'm off and events don't take place, there's no funding, and so, it's that kind of,
it's that drive as well,
all those kind of
An
things that you just
internal,
don't
external
think about if
motivation.
you work in a day job.
And I don't think it changes no matter what size your business grows to as a founder, because as soon as you take on an employee,
It's the next
one employee,
stage.
two employees, then you're responsible for somebody else's mortgage, and their welfare and how, how's their mental well-being and all of that kind of added pressure. And you still don't really have anybody else to talk to because you're the leader. And I know, Bernard, you do quite a lot around leadership, because that's obviously one of the key things that are, as you build that business, is critical.
Yeah, you're transitioning from having the idea to become a sort of founder to becoming an owner, and then an owner to becoming a leader, whatever size your business. And those you've got to grow with the business as well, and change and
transition.
learn a whole range of skills that perhaps you never thought you have to. If you're terrified of spreadsheets, money's going to be hard, but you've got to get over that if you want to run a business. If you don't know how to set up the email, you're not going to go very far till you find someone who does. And it's those kind of things, you've got to go and get it. And that internal motivation has got to be there to say, I can do this, or I can learn from this. And
again, it's that prioritising what's important, because obviously going out, making contacts, getting projects is, but then if your email isn't working that well because it's going into junk boxes wherever you send it, it's finding someone the time. And I think even for me, it's like we went to the Industry 4 event last week in Manchester, and we met 4 really, really interesting people. So that's 4 amazing. But then for me, that's like at least half an hour to write an email to them. So that's 2 hours gone, plus the time around, and then replying. And then you exponentially start building up these contacts, and you've got to manage them. You can't just ignore them for months, then come back and say, oh, I forgot to get in touch with you. But then you've got the day job part of what you're developing as well. So it is juggling. Yeah. And it's understanding all of those things. So
I think that's what Bernard mentioned before in terms of, moving on. You went, you've got a startup phase where it's all about you and your everything to that business, your marketing, your finance, your sales, your IT, to then
procurement.
Yeah, the whole piece. To then looking at that next stage where you are taking staff on, but also giving up your little baby type approach that you've got to delegate and you've got to move away from the doing to concentrate more on the strategy and how you're going to grow and how you're going to develop. And that's from a leadership perspective. It's one of the biggest issues that a lot of our founders face, that it's that letting go and moving on to that next.
Because I'm in that situation because we're a not-for-profit company. Because I'm employed, I can't be a director or a member. So I'm now managed by people I invite, kind of, and I've got to let go. And part of it is you're kind of going, so tell me what to do. But you need to tell me what to do because I'm not doing that right. But also, just let go and share. And then it comes down to trust as well. Do you trust these people that they're going to carry on supporting your vision, your ideas? Luckily they are. But then you do have to, if you're going to get the advice, you have to take it. Because it's pointless going out there going, well, I'm not bothered about GDPR. I'm not bothered about employment rights. I'm not bothered about because I'm passionate and you're gonna fall straight away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We dived into this discussion, didn't we, before we even came in, about the challenge for founders in evolving as the business grows, and them being honest and okay with what it means for their role and their kind of input into the business. And I was reflecting on my favourite ever phrase that I've heard about scaling a business from how I built this podcast that I would recommend to everybody. Like, it's so awesome. Where this lady was talking about having found multiple really successful things, and she builds them to a certain point and then she leaves. And the interviewer was asking, well, why would you leave this amazing thing that you've built? And she said, because I don't want to be a Scooby-Doo founder. And he said, what on earth are you on about? What is a Scooby-Doo founder? And she said, if you think of every episode of Scooby-Doo that you've ever seen, there's like an old building that's fallen into disrepair, and now someone comes to renovate it, and it's haunted by a ghost. And then when they pull the mask off at the end, it's the founder from the previous incarnation. He cannot let it go and cannot move with the times. And he's haunting this kind of project. You don't want to be a Scooby-Doo founder. It's brilliant. Yes. A piece of wisdom for the morning.
Bernard, you mentioned trust and family. I think that's really interesting. So you're a startup, starting out. How much do your family have to be involved? Because you've been part of a family business for so long.
Yeah.
What impact does that have?
I think hugely, and more than you realise at the time, because you can get very wrapped up in the idea and starting the business, because that's the fun bit.
Yeah.
I remember watching it as a child and coming home from school and seeing my parents building their first stock in the backyard to stick it in the garage and then start renting it, and now seeing where they are now and seeing how much it cost. But I got an insight when we started a business, because when we first began, I just used the computer in the corner of the spare room, and it was just set the company up in 2010. Off we go. And my daughter was in primary school, and a teacher came aside to my wife at one point and said, "Are you okay? Because your daughter said your husband's lost his job and he's spending all day in the back room." Because she'd been used to me going out to work, and going off to work, and then so I was just at home all the time. And it was, even for her at 5 or 6, she saw the change. She didn't understand it, but she saw it. So and coming home, I was talking to somebody the other day, coming home and actually saying, I've got no money. At the start was really painful, and working off your credit cards, working off a bank loan, burning through the savings, and being the breadwinner in the family for a number of reasons. The one who had to bring the income in, not having an income at the beginning was really tough, and thinking, have I made the right decision? Have I gone wrong? Can we do this? And people go through that. I've seen that with founders in particular. Even when their business is further down the line, they can still quickly go back to that point of actually they're the last ones to get paid, and there may not be money left for them. So there's pressures there. It affects the family. Even practical things have changed the last few years. The tax on tax you now get as an owner of business, dividend tax, which is taxed on income from it's already had corporation tax. That's come in the last few years. That takes some of your income away that people would live off. And most businesses are still very small. I think 3/4 are owner and maybe owner on their own. And so they're relying on those things. So it does have a big effect in terms of understanding all these things and what it might do to your family. So it's great if you've got other income coming in, that can really relieve the pressure. But they also have got to want to back you as well.
And I think
deal
just
with
on
your
that kind of
stresses.
retrospective responsibility you've got for your own accounts. From years, hopefully you're not going to get invested, but 6 years you've got to keep, and it's like if you made a mistake. It's and I think just trying to explain to my dear wife Vanessa what I was, even just up before Christmas, I was kind of employed through the Chamber of Commerce, South Chester Chamber of Commerce on the pledge programme. So trying to explain what that was difficult. Then to say, right, I'm going to leave that and now I'm going to set this up. So what are you doing? It's like she's got no conception of setting something up. And are you getting paid? Oh yeah, of course I'm getting paid. Yeah. I'm not telling you how much I'm getting paid, but and it's not regular, and it might not be next month, or it might be the month after, but hopefully.
We have to take that into consideration.
Of course you do. Luckily, she supports what I do. Just gives up, goes, oh, go on. But obviously, if you've got, because children and a lot more responsibility, if you're the sole breadwinner, so to speak, which thankfully I'm not. To actually then go off and say, I'm going to take this risk, it's massive.
It's massive. Trish, tell us more then about mentoring, some of the successes that you've seen through Tech Manchester. What have you seen over the last couple of years?
I think everybody's kind of touched upon it here, is about that importance about reaching out and leaning on your network. And I think it's I do the weekly podcast, and every single guest that comes in, I ask them sort of what's the best piece of advice that you could give, and every single one says ask for help. Reach out to your network.
That was going to be my last question. You're not all allowed to say ask for help.
So even yesterday we had I don't know if you know Julianne Parker from A Million Stars. She was one of the competitors on Venture Fest. And we brought her in to talk about pivoting her business, and she told this kind of story about how she started off as sort of events, sustainable events for families, and then started this new business to address the issue with campsite waste at music festivals. So they go in after like V Festival and Creamfields, and they pick up all the abandoned tents, and then they sanitize those and then take them into the prisons. And the prisons then it's part of their sort of development program, where they then turn that into like fashion wear, so which is like more ponchos and more sort of like rain macs and things like that. But that whole process came from reaching out to your network and leaning on people and asking for help. I can't remember the name of the lady, but it was from networking and spending time with business people that knew more than she did, where she got those ideas from. So mentors, absolutely, everybody should have one, and everybody should be having a go at mentoring someone else. Like everybody sitting here is actually mentoring, I think. Well done, all of you. Because it is that expertise, that is that sounding board, and the emotional support that they can give you. And it's all of the things that we're talking about today in terms of that kind of helping hand that you need, that you don't have anybody else to turn to, because sometimes your wife doesn't really understand or get like what it is that you're doing. And that's hard. That's hard. You do want to share it with
a relationship webinar. Well, I think, Mark, you said it a good few times along the way, and maybe you didn't even know it was formal mentoring, but reaching out to people and ask them to help you. You had an idea and to run with it. That's been the difference for
with this one. And you feel now it's got structure. And and then by reaching out and bringing people in and sharing your idea, one, you've got to let, not from a kind of share financial structure, but emotionally, you've got to allow them to get involved and shape it. So it can't just be your idea, because it's only going to grow if it's a group of people, collaborative, working together in a kind of community practice where you let go part of it and you actually think, right, okay, we'll go that way, because you're taking their advice, and they've got experience from a whole, three of the people I work for. One works in deep space satellite systems, two are engineers, and they're bringing stuff to it that is really valuable. Not just from the engineering point of view, but from the way they do their jobs, they're bringing that into the business. Like I said, our 3 sheets of minutes, which I've never had a meeting and never had a minutes in the previous.
Did you read them?
No, I don't. Everyone else does. I just nod my head. But that's going on, and things are being checked. And have we got the insurance? Have we done that? Have we got all our policies sorted out? Yeah. Have they been reviewed 3 times or twice? because then when you go for funding, have we got our safeguarding? Is the training taking place? And thankfully, people around working together, that's all happening. So then if we now go for a bid for children in need or big lottery, we can tick those boxes. Whereas on your own, you just can't do it.
Is that something that, like, you obviously had your first one, which only lasted 3 years. Do you think that's something that you've learned from the failure of the first one, or when did you come to realise that you needed to start plugging those sort of gaps
I knew
in
that
the
when we
business?
started it, and that's why
The very first one?
No, this one.
This one.
Because then it was just an idea, and an opportunity came up, so there was a bit of funding. Okay, we'll do that, and no one really. And this was 15 years, so no one really asked questions about tendering, because the first lot of money we got, we were just kind of given. I won't say where from, but and it, whereas now obviously that just couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And the whole thing of just the safeguarding, and then just for the insurance, we went to an insurance company in near Macclesfield, and they're brokers, so I could go and sit down with them, and they're a little bit more expensive. You go online, you can get all the insurance for £300. Oh, great. And it will cover 25% of what you need. You go and sit down with someone and goes, right, have you got this insurance? Have you got that? You might need this. And you go, no, you're just selling me insurance. But our discussions back up, as a group, we'll get it all. Because the last thing, have you got trustees insurance? Because almost you're saying you're not responsible for anything, but if something went really wrong and you're working with young people, if you've not got that, you're really putting people out on a limb.
It's really, something simple as insurance is a really important point, particularly for people who've never run a business before, is they might start it at home. They might be using their own car. And then when we're doing the business planning workshops, you say to them, actually, you need to then tell your insurance company you've got business insurance on your car, business insurance at home. And it's something that it can be easy to jump because you think, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to
spend that
extra.
right now.
But actually then if something goes wrong, you really can't afford it. So it's some of those, you have to grow up, don't you, in terms of responsibility. You can't always negate some of those obligations once you becomes a business as well.
We've got a plan for what happens if things go wrong. Like one of the startups, everything was on his Mac laptop and the hard drive failed, and he didn't have backup.
So
And even from the insurance side, which increasingly important is the whole cybersecurity and GDPR site in this place. And they're talking to me and saying, and do you want? And part of it was, this is another one you're just making up. But then actually, at 1 second thinking about it, going, actually, yes. If that hits, we lose a laptop and it's got a load of emails on. All right, we don't have a big turnover at the moment, so 4 times whatever it is, it's not going to be great, but it's still going to reputationally hit you. And you need the advice and the legal advice. So paying £50 or £100 a year to get the cover for that is really crucial.
And I think that advice piece sometimes gets lost in the mentoring discussion because, as you said earlier on, there's the mentors that are part of like formal programs, and then there are people that are part of your organisation that provide a bit of kind of mentoring as part of what they do. And then actually you should be looking to advisors who you have a long-standing relationship with. So it's not just transactional, it's not just do me a set of accounts or run me a workshop. It's this is who we are and this is where we're going. Please tell me the things that I don't see coming because I've not done it before. And actually you should be able to put yourself in the centre of a kind of good suite of advisors who can do that for you and can call out, do you know what, I see where this is going and this is super exciting, but I've seen it before and you might want to think about.
I think Trish said, you need to plan for what happens if things go wrong, but you need to plan for what happens if things go right, and things go boom, and it really, because that's what you're aiming for as well, isn't it?
Which can lead to failure as well.
Which, of course,
if you don't plan, you plan a massive PR campaign about a big launch, and then your site fails because everybody's landed on it. Can kill your business.
Or you do get a big project. At the moment, I can manage what we're doing. But if some of the things I've started meeting and working all said fantastic, and they actually come up with the money, we go, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So it's almost like planning to say.
Your business model, isn't it? Because we've done the courses here as well with the smaller businesses. Is what if you are successful? As you say, does your profit actually disappear because you're successful? Because you've not thought about how you'd reproduce what you do when it's not you, or when you need to get someone else to make it. What's your business model? Because that comes back to your vision, your values, all those things that drive how you're going to organise the business. And it's just thinking ahead.
I meet someone tomorrow night who runs big events all over the world, country. Some of the projects we've got could fit into that model. But then the discussion we've had on Monday night is, but then you're given the quality of what you're doing. you're then handing over your name and your model to someone
Somebody else that,
which might work from the model they have, but for us, it's not, because ours is about young people, careers, advice. It's not about experience, so to speak. So some things would work like that, but actually, and then you're thinking, yeah, but that'd be great if we could do it across the country. But then it's, and what we don't want to do is get the point where we're having to chase funding to employ lots of people to do big things when we'd rather collaborate with colleges, with universities, with other organisations and put our bit in there and share that rather than control it all. But and then that comes back to giving away part of your ideas and sharing and collaborating.
Right, so I do have to wrap up. We need, I know, the time is after flying, you won't believe. I know, we're only getting started, aren't we? But I see flapping arms over behind the cameras. So I need thoughts. Trish has stolen our final question. But,
Sorry.
no, I'm only joking. A summary for people, where do they start? What does a great business look like? Any thoughts on people who are watching, who are at that stage thinking, do I jump? Do I quit the job? I'm on Tech Nation website, look at the resources, watching the videos. What advice would you give to people, Janine?
For me, it's absolutely seek out advice wherever you are, just to run ideas by somebody, get their thoughts, look at whether something has got legs, but also take opportunities. People sometimes, I don't know whether to do this or not. If an opportunity lands in front of you, seize it.
Yeah, seize it. Brilliant. What do you think, Mark? What advice?
I don't know if the word precious is right, but don't be prepared to share what you're doing, because you can't do it on your own. And coming back to the opportunities, get out there and meet people and talk about your ideas. And you don't put yourself in a position where those ideas are going to be stolen, so to speak. But don't keep them all to yourself, because either way is not going to work.
You're not going to grow.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Trish?
Well, I would agree and add to that, because we're both sitting nodding going, how many startups to say, I'm not going to tell you about my idea because no one's ever thought about it before. It's like,
well, I
guarantee
You're going to have to tell someone.
Or they're going to sign an NDA before even chat to you.
No, I'm not. No.
Yeah.
All the time.
How can you expect to grow?
But it's that preciousness piece. If you've come up with an idea, absolutely have a go, explore it, but don't be so precious that you wouldn't, like we were talking to Julianne yesterday, be prepared to pivot, be open-minded. And if you come up with an idea and then there's actually a different application for it entirely, like there's a billion different success stories. Facebook was a dating agency, wasn't it? Slack was a tool for developers, yet we're all using it now. And don't be so precious that you wouldn't then pivot it and start something new, and just let that idea go once you've explored it. Fail fast, fail quick.
Brilliant. Thanks, Trish.
Yeah, I'd agree with those. I think for me, a big one would be about there's never the perfect time, there's never the perfect moment. So when you have to make a decision, you just have to make it. You decide afterwards whether it was the best or not so good, but that's part of the responsibility. So if you're waiting for the perfect time, it won't happen. And you have to decide when that time is and take it from there.
Brilliant advice.
I have drawn the short straw.
Everyone's stolen your answers.
I was thinking, well, not that one. Oh, no, not that one. So I think, I suppose, back to some of the themes that we talked about in terms of the big ask of a founder to grow with the business and change and evolve over time. I think you have to be a bit like a sponge in the beginning. So you've got an idea, you've shared it with some people, you're bringing it into the world. You're thinking about actually just moving forward and making some decisions and having something happen. I think you just have to find ways to be like a sponge, and that might be listening to podcasts in the car, it might be watching webinars, it might be doing bite-sized little courses or going to networks. You just have to have this idea as the core of what it is you're pushing forward, but you have to just be like a sponge to other things, because it's going to change and evolve and develop, and the team are going to just emerge, and you need to be kind of on the lookout for all of that, I think.
But just really quick on that, if you are open and you share something, you engage people on a different level, so they're not just come in, I'll give you some advice, they actually like you.
They're buying into
absolutely.
it.
I talk to young people all the time about the importance of handshaking and saying hello, eye contact. And straight away that opens up an employer to go, what, I want to find out about you, rather than, and it's the same kind of thing.
You want people have to buy into you.
Because you don't just want advice on a technical level, you want emotional engagement, even on a little tiny bit.
Brilliant. That was a lovely summary there. You did really nice, Liz. Thanks very much. I think this could be part one. What do you reckon? Should we do it again?
There's definitely a part two.
I've got something else booked in for next Wednesday, but maybe the following Wednesday. Thank you all so much. That was brilliant advice from such great experience and so many different areas as well. We've got great, really, really good resources as well that you've given people. So thank you so much. Really appreciate that. From everyone here at UK Fast, hope you enjoyed that. We really did. And thank you very much for watching.